Today we talk about our first board by Proctor. This is episode 14. For more, check out shredshow.com. Hello and welcome to Shred Show. I am your host, Chris Groh, and this is the internet's most stoked surfboard show. And I'm going to start off this episode with a warning because we are going to get a little bit technical. In my hands, I have got brand new surfboard technology, never seen before. This surfboard is a replica of a board that you'll see Nick Rosa surfing in the new Reef film called Anything Sing. It premieres on May 1st on whatyouth.com. That's only 3 days away. And if you want to see some deleted scenes of Nick Rosa surfing an amazing right-hand point break in Morocco, I'm going to link that up in the info for this video. Now, when we talk about the G4E Plus, there's really two conversations that we need to have. One, the materials that go into building this board and its construction. Two, the shape of this surfboard. First, we're going to talk about the construction, and that will lead us into a conversation about the shape. This surfboard is an epoxy board, and we're going to talk about the construction starting on the top, going down into the foam. On top of this board is a special bead of epoxy resin that Proctor Surfboards uses to solve the little problem that some surfers have with epoxy boards, saying that they feel a little bit ping-pongy. If you've ever surfed an epoxy board and described it as feeling ping-pongy, what you've experienced is kind of a feeling like the surfboard could blow away on a windy day. This bead of epoxy resin that Proctor Surfboards uses isn't too light, but it's still very durable. Beneath that bead of epoxy resin on this surfboard, on the deck and the hull, is one sheet of S-glass and one sheet of S-glass. That's very different than how standard polyurethane surfboards are made. If you don't know what a polyurethane surfboard is, it's just a standard surfboard that most people think of when they think of a surfboard. It's white and it's encased in fiberglass. What most polyurethane surfboards do is they put 2 sheets of 4-ounce E-glass on the deck of the board, and they put 1 sheet of 4-ounce E-glass on the bottom of the board. Why do they put 2 on the top? Because we need more durability on the top of the surfboard because that's where our feet go. The problem with doing that is that some surfers say that that creates problems for the flex in their surfboards. Why? Because when you have 2 sheets of 4-ounce E-glass on the deck of a surfboard, the deck will want to flex a little bit less than the bottom of the surfboard, which would only have 1 sheet of 4-ounce E-glass. If you don't know what flex in a surfboard is, it's the properties of a board that help it flex and bend when we push it into turns. So if this surfboard was turning right now, the tail of this board would actually be bending back towards my face, and as we push it through the turn, it will spring back to normal, helping us spring out of that turn. Beneath those sheets of S-glass on the deck and the hull of the surfboard is these black lines that you're seeing on the surfboard. What this is a carbon Kevlar mesh that is used because of its ability to create strength in a surfboard and its ability to still flex. You can see that the carbon Kevlar mesh flares out towards the tail and flares out towards the nose, leaving open spaces in the nose and the tail. Why? Because this takes a lesson from snowboards. If you know anything about snowboards, you know that they're stiffer in the center and they flex more out towards the tail and the nose. This surfboard does the same thing. An excellent tool to help understand the design of this surfboard is thinking about a skate ramp. When you're skateboarding on a half pipe, you're skating on masonite, plywood. That masonite and plywood is great to skate on, but it does not have the structural integrity that the ramp needs to support your body and support you skating on it, so they put 2x4s beneath that plywood to add strength. That is what this carbon Kevlar mesh is. It's like the 2x4s on a skate ramp. Something else you'll notice on the tail of the G4E Plus is these carbon Kevlar patches. These are very different than the carbon strips that you see on a lot of surfboards to help add durability for your heel and your toe. On those carbon strips that you see on a lot of other surfboards, the carbon strips are placed with lines going this way. And again, that can help with the strength of the deck of a surfboard, but it can also create problems for flex. Because if we place carbon strips going this way, they don't want to bend quite as well when we push them into a turn. But with these carbon Kevlar strips, you can see the lines are going vertical according to how you're looking at them right now. They're going up and down. That means that this board can flex just how we want it to when we put it into turns, and we can push it, and the carbon Kevlar strips won't create problems for flex like they would if they were placed horizontally like this. Now you may be asking yourself right now, why use carbon Kevlar mesh and carbon Kevlar strips on this surfboard instead of carbon like everyone else uses? The great thing about carbon is that it's strong and it's really hard to break, but it's kind of like glass. Glass is really strong and it doesn't like to break, but if you hit it hard enough, it will. Kevlar has some properties like leather, and if you punch leather really hard, we know what happens. It kind of has more give to it, and it doesn't break. Beneath the carbon Kevlar mesh on this board, we have expanded polystyrene. All in all, encompassing a surfboard that has a very unique epoxy design, but we haven't even talked about the stringers yet. The interesting thing about stringers in a surfboard is they help create durability and strength down the center of the board, but wood stringers have what's called a shear point. A shear point is the point at which wood breaks. This surfboard doesn't have a stringer down the middle. It has parabolic stringers around the sides, and they're not wood, they're not balsa, they're polymer stringers. Polymer stringers are a very interesting technology to put into a surfboard because they don't break. And if we took the parabolic stringers out of this board, we could actually bend them right back on top of each other without breaking. And if you think about a fish as it flows through the water, that is what this surfboard is designed to do, because each stringer can bend in different ways on each side of the board. All the flex properties of this surfboard amount to a board that has a lot more than just one rocker. If you think about the rocker on a surfboard, it's there in the foam and the stringer, and you're kind of stuck with it. But when a surfboard flexes as much as the G4E Plus does, that gives you the opportunity to have more than just one rocker in a board, because the board can actually adjust to the face of the wave that you put it in. So to recap the construction of this surfboard, it's a special bead of epoxy resin on top, followed by a sheet of S-glass, followed by carbon Kevlar mesh, followed by expanded polystyrene foam. Which brings us into a discussion about the shape, and we're going to start out by talking about the concaves on this board. Starting at the top, we notice a single concave going down, single concave, very consistent single concave. On a lot of surfboards, the single concave depth in the board can vary. If you imagine a single concave having a certain depth up here, getting deeper here, slowly getting more shallow as it comes through here, those type of concaves are very good for certain types of surfing. This kind of a single concave that keeps the same depth as it goes through the body of the board helps for a very predictable type of surfing, where you can keep speed in the surfboard, where you won't experience that kind of start-stop sensation that you can feel with surfboards that don't have a consistent depth of concave going through the body of the surfboard. Looking at the rest of the concaves, a very subtle double concave inset into the single concave. That just means that there is a little bit of a double concave coming through here, but the center of this is not quite coming up high enough to call it a double concave. It's a single concave with a slight double inset and single concave all the way out through the back tail of the board. Looking at the rails of the G4E Plus, shortboard rails, not quite pinched in, but definitely less volume than you'd have on a really small wave surfboard. And as we look at the deck of this board, domed deck, but not a very extreme dome, a good amount of volume coming out from the center of the board out towards the rails. Rocker of this surfboard is really where a lot of the magic would happen on a board like this, because it's got a flattish rocker going through the center, and it has definitely more than a moderate amount of nose rocker, but not a super extreme amount of nose rocker, but it's got a really good amount of tail rocker with a flip happening out here in the tail to kind of act as an exhaust. What that does is it gives us a lot of really great performance characteristics in a surfboard, but you don't need an Indo boat trip to make this kind of a board work. G4E stands for good for everything, because it's a performance shortboard that you can make work in most waves. If you like the video, click like. If you really like the video, click favorite. And if you want to say hi, do so in the comments below or on Twitter @ChrisGrow. And we really look forward to seeing you next week on Shred Show.